Everything changes in a millionaire's life. After his dog missing for 5 years returns home, Benjamin Harrison parked his Lexus at the mansion's entrance and let out a deep sigh. Another day of exhausting meetings, relentless negotiations, and decisions that would affect the futures of hundreds of employees. His life was a perfect reflection of material success and the emotional emptiness that had consumed him for years. That's when he saw something impossible as he opened the front door. Duke, his golden retriever who had disappeared exactly 5 years ago, was sitting calmly in the living room as if he had never left. The dog held in his mouth an old navy blue tie Benjamin had worn on the day of his disappearance. His eyes welled up with tears as his entire body froze at the sight of this impossible scene. "Mr. Harrison, he just showed up at the gate this morning," exclaimed Mrs. Jenkins, the housekeeper who had worked at the mansion for over a decade. "Mr. Rodriguez, the gardener, recognized him right away. It's really Duke, sir." Benjamin approached slowly, afraid the vision might vanish like a dream. He knelt before the dog, ruining the perfect crease of his custom-made Italian trousers. When he touched the golden fur, a wave of long-suppressed emotions rushed over him. "Duke, is it really you, boy?" His voice trembled as the dog tilted his head slightly, recognizing his owner's call. The animal moved closer, placing the tie on the floor and gently licking Benjamin's hand. At that moment, something inside the businessman shattered. All the emotional walls he had built since the dog's disappearance began to crumble like a sandcastle hit by the tide. "Cancel all my appointments for the rest of the week," Benjamin announced over the phone the next morning, ignoring the protests of his partner, Michael Roberts. "Benjamin, have you lost your mind? We have the meeting with the Chinese investors tomorrow. We've been working on this deal for 8 months. Michael's voice was incredulous on the other end. "Reschedule it. Tell them I had a family." "Emergency," Benjamin replied with a firmness that surprised even himself. "Family emergency? Since when do you care about family?" Michael's sarcasm was palpable. "What happened? Did someone die?" "My dog came back, Michael." The silence that followed was thick with tension. Benjamin could almost picture his partner's disapproving glare. "Your dog? The one that went missing years ago? You're going to throw millions away over a dog?" "Exactly," Benjamin replied, ending the call without waiting for a response. In the days that followed, Benjamin rediscovered small pleasures he had forgotten. Morning walks around the estate, the simple joy of throwing a ball and watching Duke happily chase after it, the quiet comfort of companionship while reading a book at night. It was as if time had reversed, offering him a second chance he hadn't known he needed. Yet something strange began to catch his attention. Duke seemed to recognize every corner of the house, but acted unusually in certain spaces. In the office especially, the dog grew restless, hiding under the desk whenever the doorbell rang. And when Michael showed up unannounced to drop off some documents, Duke let out a low growl, something he had never done before. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. Examining the dog more closely, Benjamin noticed a small fresh scar near his front paw and something else that hadn't been there before. A silver tag on the collar with an engraved address. It was an unfamiliar street in a modest neighborhood, on the outskirts of New York, far from the sophisticated Upper East Side where his mansion stood. The following Saturday, without telling anyone, Benjamin put Duke in the passenger seat of his least conspicuous car, a black Tesla, and drove to the address. As he moved away from the tree-lined streets of his neighborhood, the scenery gradually changed. Mansions gave way to modest homes, high-end boutiques were replaced by corner stores, and the smooth pavement yielded to roads with small potholes that made his car sway occasionally. Duke seemed oddly excited during the ride, his head out the window, the wind ruffling his golden fur. When they reached the street indicated on the tag, the dog began barking happily as if recognizing the way. The house was simple, walls of faded yellow, a small well-kept garden, and a white fence that had seen better days. Benjamin parked in front and hesitated. What connection could his dog have with this place? Before he could gather the courage to step out of the car, the front door opened. A grey-haired woman, appearing to be in her 70s, appeared on the porch. Her eyes widened when she saw Duke, and she brought her hands to her mouth, visibly emotional. Benjamin got out of the car, and Duke immediately jumped through the open window, running toward the woman, who was now slowly descending the porch steps. The dog jumped around her, barking joyfully, while the woman bent down to hug him, tears streaming down her wrinkled face. "You must be Benjamin," she said, finally looking at the businessman as he approached hesitantly. "I'm Mrs. Thompson. I think we have a lot to talk about." Sitting in the modest living room, with old but well-kept furniture, Benjamin held a cup of homemade coffee while Duke rested at Mrs. Thompson's feet, as if that were his usual spot. "I found this big boy almost 5 years ago, abandoned in Central Park," the woman explained, stroking the dog's head. "He was thin, scared, with no collar. I took him to the vet, searched for owners in newspapers and online, but when no one came forward, I ended up keeping him." Benjamin frowned, confused. "But that's impossible. Duke disappeared from my current home, not from Central Park. I never took him there." Mrs. Thompson looked equally puzzled. "But didn't you live near the park before, with your wife?" The mention of his ex-wife made Benjamin swallow hard. He and Jennifer had divorced 6 years ago, shortly before he moved to his current mansion. "How do you know about my ex-wife?" Mrs. Thompson hesitated. "Well, it was your wife who brought Apollo to visit me a few times over the years." "Apollo?" "That's what I called him because he looked like a Greek god with that golden fur shining in the sun." The woman smiled. "I only found out he was yours when my daughter Ashley saw the article about you in the magazine and recognized the dog in the photo." Benjamin felt dizzy from the avalanche of contradictory information. Jennifer visiting this woman with Duke, who was actually called Apollo, while he spent sleepless nights searching for his missing pet? Nothing made sense. "Mrs. Thompson, may I ask how you know Jennifer?" The woman smiled gently. "My daughter Ashley used to work for you, taking care of the house and this boy here." She pointed at Duke. "Until, She stopped abruptly, as if she'd said something she shouldn't have. "Until," Benjamin pressed. "Until she was let go," Mrs. Thompson finished, looking away. "Ashley loved working for you, especially taking care of the dog. She was devastated when she lost the job." Benjamin tried to remember an employee named Ashley, but he couldn't. With his overloaded schedule and long hours at the office, he barely knew the employees who worked in his home. That was the kind of thing he left for Jennifer to handle, and after the divorce for his assistant or Mrs. Jenkins. Returning home that night, Benjamin was determined to understand what had really happened. He went up to the attic, where he kept boxes of belongings from his previous life, things he couldn't bring himself to throw away, but also didn't want on display. Among dusty photo albums and mementos, he found a specific album from the time when he was still married. He began flipping through it, and Duke, who had followed him up there, suddenly showed interest in the pictures, sniffing them and letting out soft barks when he saw photos of Jennifer. In one particular photo, Benjamin recognized a young woman in the background holding a broom while he and Jennifer posed by the pool of their old house. Could this be the Ashley Mrs. Thompson had mentioned? On Monday, defying all expectations, Benjamin asked his driver to take him to his former residence in Greenwich Village, where he had lived with Jennifer. The house, an elegant 1940s construction, now belonged to a family of Italian diplomats. As he observed the property from the outside, an elderly woman tending the garden next door recognized him. "Mr. Harrison, what a surprise to see you here after all this time." It was Mrs. Wilson, who had been tending that same garden for at least 2 decades. "Did you come to see the house? Do you miss it?" she asked with the familiarity of someone who knew the neighborhood better than anyone. "Actually, I'm trying to solve a mystery," Benjamin replied, showing a photo of Duke on his phone. "Have you by any chance seen this dog around here in recent years?" The woman's eyes lit up with recognition. "Of course, your wife used to walk him here often. The last time was a few months ago before winter." Benjamin felt a chill. "My wife? Mrs. Wilson, I've been divorced for 6 years. She seemed genuinely surprised. "Divorced? But I saw Mrs. Miller with the dog many times. I thought you had moved away for work and she stayed nearby." The confusion only grew. Why would Jennifer be walking Duke around their old neighborhood when the dog had disappeared from their current mansion? And why had she never told him she'd found him? Without revealing his growing bewilderment, Benjamin thanked Mrs. Wilson and left with a new mission: to locate Jennifer. They hadn't spoken in years, maintaining only the bare minimum contact through lawyers after a divorce that, though civil on the surface, had left deep scars on both of them. Hiring a discreet private investigator, Benjamin discovered Jennifer was living modestly in a 2-bedroom apartment in Brooklyn, working as a literature teacher at a private school. It was far from the luxurious standard they could have maintained if they'd stayed married, or even if she had received the full alimony agreed upon in the divorce. That last detail puzzled him. According to the settlement, Jennifer was supposed to receive a substantial monthly sum for the first 10 years after the separation. Benjamin had always assumed his finance department was making the payments regularly. "Kevin, I need to verify the alimony payments to Jennifer Miller," he said upon entering his accountant's office on Tuesday morning. The middle-aged man adjusted his glasses nervously. "Alimony? Oh yes, everything's in order, just as you instructed." "I need to see proof of all payments from the last 6 years," Benjamin insisted. "Right now? It's just that I need to prepare that documentation, and with the annual audit coming up—" "Now, Kevin," Benjamin's tone brooked no argument. 2 hours later, it was clear something was very wrong. The records showed that the payments had been stopped 5.5 years ago, just 6 months after the divorce. "Who authorized the halt of these payments?" asked Benjamin, his voice dangerously calm. Kevin seemed cornered. It was Mr. Michael. He brought the authorization signed by you, saying there was a new agreement. Show me that authorization." The document presented had his signature, but Benjamin didn't remember signing it. A closer look revealed subtle differences compared to his usual signature. When he returned home that night, Benjamin looked at Duke with new eyes. The dog seemed agitated whenever Michael was around, as if sensing something he himself couldn't see. Over the following week, Benjamin conducted a surprise audit of his companies, uncovering a systematic pattern of embezzlement carried out by Michael over the years. Small amounts that, added up, amounted to millions. Forged signatures on important documents, contract manipulation. As the evidence piled up, Duke continued displaying curious behaviors. One night, Benjamin found him persistently scratching at the door of a closet in the office, where he kept old documents. Among them, he found the original divorce papers, which differed significantly from the final version he had signed. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now continuing. On Friday, Benjamin had to travel to Washington, D.C. for an urgent meeting. Reluctant to leave Duke alone, he decided to take him to stay with Mrs. Thompson over the weekend. When he arrived at her modest home on Sunday to pick up the dog, he found not only the older woman, but also a younger woman arriving at the same time. Recognition was immediate. It was the woman from the photo, a few years older but unmistakable. "Ashley?" Benjamin ventured. She seemed surprised he knew her name. "Mr. Harrison," she replied, her voice a mix of respect and suspicion. Mrs. Thompson looked between them, sensing the tension in the air. "You two need to talk," she said simply, grabbing her purse. "I'll go to the store and be back in an hour." "Duke want to come with me?" The dog hesitated, glancing from Benjamin to Ashley before following the older woman. Sitting in the small living room, Benjamin got straight to the point. "Why were you fired from my home?" Ashley took a deep breath before answering. "Your partner, Mr. Michael, fired me. He said it was your direct order, that I was snooping through documents and that you wouldn't tolerate nosy employees. I never authorized your dismissal. I barely knew you existed," Benjamin admitted. "What really happened?" Ashley's expression revealed years of pent-up resentment. "Duke saw Mr. Michael going through your personal documents when you weren't there. He'd get nervous, barking, whenever he saw him near your office. One day I caught Mr. Michael photographing some papers. When he noticed me, he said he was just organizing things at your request. The next day I was fired. And Duke, what happened to him?" He disappeared a week later. I tried to warn Mrs. Jennifer, but she was traveling. When I came back to collect my last belongings, Mr. Michael said the dog had run away and that you were furious, blaming me for it. I was too scared to push further. The pieces were falling into place. Benjamin looked out the window, watching Duke play in the yard with Mrs. Thompson. How did he end up with Jennifer? Ashley smiled for the first time. Mrs. Jennifer found him by chance in the park months later. He was thin, scared. She was going to return him, but she discovered something about Mr. Michael, something in the company documents. He threatened her, said he would harm you if she told anyone. To protect you, she kept Duke hidden and cut off all contact. Benjamin felt a wave of conflicting emotions. Jennifer had protected both him and Duke, while he had assumed she simply moved on after the divorce. Later that day, while examining Duke, Benjamin noticed something he'd missed before: a small bulge under the leather of the collar. Carefully, he discovered a hidden compartment containing a tiny flash drive. When he plugged it into his computer, he found dozens of photos of confidential company documents, revealing detailed schemes of embezzlement orchestrated by Michael over 6 years, including the manipulation of their divorce papers. The following Wednesday, Benjamin invited Michael to a meeting at his mansion, claiming he wanted to discuss a new acquisition. Duke had been restless all morning, as if sensing what was coming. When the doorbell rang, it wasn't just Michael who arrived. To everyone's surprise, Mrs. Jenkins announced, "Mr. Harrison, Mrs. Jennifer is here. She says she needs to speak with you urgently." The panic on Michael's face when he saw Jennifer was priceless. He tried to apologize and leave quickly, but Duke blocked his path, growling in a way he never had before. Jennifer looked different from her married days. Her hair, once always perfectly styled in an elegant chignon, now fell in natural curls over her shoulders. She wore simple clothes without the luxury brands that once filled her wardrobe. But her eyes still held the same sharp sparkle that had captured Benjamin's heart years ago. "We need to talk," she said, looking not at Benjamin, but at Michael. In the minutes that followed, the truth came out in an avalanche of revelations. Jennifer explained how Michael had approached her after the divorce, claiming Benjamin wanted to get rid of Duke because he brought painful memories. She, who had always loved the dog, secretly took care of him. "When I accidentally discovered the embezzlement, Michael threatened me," she said as Duke stood alert beside her. "He said if I tried to tell you anything, he'd make it look like you were involved in the schemes, that he'd ruin your reputation, your company, everything you built." "Why didn't you come to me anyway?" Benjamin asked, his voice betraying years of pent-up hurt. Jennifer looked down. "Because I believed him when he said you didn't want anything to do with me, that you'd moved on with other women, other interests. And then it became harder every day to explain why I'd hidden Duke for so long." Cornered, Michael tried to deny everything. "This is ridiculous. She's clearly trying to get back at you because you moved on after the divorce. Benjamin, we've been friends for 15 years. We built an empire together." It was then that Duke did something extraordinary. He walked to the living room, sofa, and with determination pulled out a hidden bundle from beneath it, more documents proving the fraud. Jennifer smiled proudly. "I trained Duke to find papers with Michael's scent. After I realized what he was doing, I taught him to fetch any document that smelled like that awful aftershave he wears." Confronted with all the evidence, Michael finally confessed. His plan had been to isolate Benjamin from everyone he loved, making him dependent only on his friendship and professional advice. By manipulating the divorce, he ensured Jennifer received far less than she deserved, while funneling millions into offshore accounts. "You were distracted, obsessed with the company, with growth, with numbers," Michael justified, showing no real remorse. "It was so easy." In the months that followed, with Michael removed and facing criminal charges for his actions, Benjamin began a profound transformation. The mansion, once cold and empty, came to life when Jennifer started visiting them regularly. Duke, always by Benjamin's side, became a symbol of loyalty and second chances. The bond between the businessman and his dog even inspired an initiative to adopt abandoned animals, funded by a foundation Benjamin created in partnership with Mrs. Thompson and Ashley, who was rehired to coordinate the project. Dear listener, If you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. On a sunny Sunday afternoon, nearly a year after Duke's return, Benjamin organized a picnic in the garden of his mansion, something he would never have done in his old life. Jennifer, who now spent almost every weekend there, played with Duke on the lawn. Ashley and Mrs. Thompson helped set the table under the shade of a century-old tree. Watching the scene, Benjamin felt a clarity he had never known before. True wealth had always been within his reach, just waiting for him to open his eyes and see it. It wasn't the imported cars, the luxury watches, or the properties around the world. It was the ability to truly connect with others, human or not. Duke, as if reading his thoughts, approached and rested his head on Benjamin's lap. In his mouth was something that made Benjamin smile, a small velvet box he had set aside earlier. Inside it, a ring, a symbol of a fresh start, no bank account could buy. That night, under the stars of New York, Benjamin proposed to Jennifer again. Not with expensive dinners or grand gestures, but with the simplicity of someone who had finally understood the meaning of true love. "We don't have to go back to what we were," he said, holding her hands. "We can build something new, something better." Jennifer, tears in her eyes, looked at Duke before answering, "I think we started down that path a long time ago. We just needed a guide to show us the right direction." The guide, lying at their feet with the serenity of one who had fulfilled his mission, seemed to smile in his own canine way. Months later, Benjamin sold the mansion and moved with Jennifer and Duke to a smaller, cozier home with a large garden, where the dog could run freely. The penthouse office in the financial district was swapped for a workspace at home, where he could work without missing life's important moments. The company continued to grow, but now with different priorities. Benjamin implemented policies that valued work-life balance for his employees. The Foundation for Abandoned Animals became a model of success, replicated in several U.S. cities. On a special Sunday, as they celebrated 2 years since Duke's return, Benjamin received an unexpected visit. Kevin, his former accountant, "I came to apologize," said the visibly embarrassed man, "and to bring something that might be important." It was an old journal of Michael's, found hidden in a safe at the office. Among meeting notes and various numbers was a detailed account of how he had planned to separate Benjamin and Jennifer, manipulating information on both sides, making each believe the other wanted a divorce. "He even lightly drugged your drinks before important conversations to make you more irritable," Kevin explained, ashamed of his silence all those years. "He did the same to Mrs. Jennifer. You never stood a chance." Benjamin felt his legs weaken and had to sit down. Images of countless nights when he had come home, inexplicably irritated, flashed through his mind like a sped-up movie. He recalled a particularly painful argument where Jennifer had mentioned wanting children, something they had both always wanted. That night, after coffee offered by Michael at the end of the workday, Benjamin had reacted with disproportionate coldness. "Do you really think we have time for kids now, with the company needing all my attention? Always so selfish, Jennifer." Though his own words now sounded like those of a stranger in his memory. "He kept a record of everything," Kevin continued, flipping through the journal. Day 32 of the plan, double dose before the anniversary talk. Benjamin completely forgot the date. Jennifer cried all night. Even the gifts you sent her, Benjamin, were intercepted and replaced with less personal options. Jennifer covered her mouth with her hands, silent tears streaming down her face. "The sapphire necklace, I never got it. You said you'd ordered something special for our 10th anniversary, but only a generic flower card arrived. I thought you'd given up on us. And the wristwatch you gave me for my birthday." Benjamin remembered, the pieces falling painfully into place. "So impersonal, so unlike anything you'd ever picked before. It wasn't you who chose it, was it?" Jennifer shook her head. "I'd ordered a special pen, had a message engraved. I never understood why you didn't mention it when we talked on the phone that day." Duke approached as if sensing the rising tension, positioning himself between the couple, looking from one to the other, with those wise eyes that seemed to understand every word exchanged. The revelation, though painful, brought a strange comfort. The inexplicable fights, the sudden mood swings, the misunderstandings that seemed to come out of nowhere. It all made sense now. It wasn't their fault. It never had been. "Why are you telling us this now?" Jennifer asked. Kevin looked at Duke, who watched him intently. "Because I realized what this dog represents. It's not just loyalty, it's truth. He kept the connection between you when everything conspired to pull you apart. Made me see there was still time for me to do the right thing too." The following spring, Jennifer discovered she was pregnant. The news, received with joy by the bee. Couple seemed to have a special effect on Duke, who became even more protective, sleeping by her bedroom door every night. "Do you think he understands?" Jennifer asked one evening, rubbing her 4-month belly. "I'm sure he does," Benjamin replied. "He's always understood more than we realized." The pregnancy was a time of discovery for the couple. Benjamin, who for years had suppressed his emotions in favor of work, now allowed himself to marvel at every little change. He accompanied Jennifer to every appointment, personally decorated the nursery, and spent hours talking to his wife's growing belly. On a rainy Sunday afternoon, while Jennifer rested, Benjamin found Duke lying near the library, intently watching the rain through the window. He sat beside the dog and on impulse began to speak, as he never had with anyone. "You know, Duke, I've always been afraid of not being good enough, afraid of failing, afraid to love and lose. My father said feelings were for the weak," he confessed, stroking the dog's golden fur. "He built a company from scratch and taught me success and feelings didn't mix. When he lost my mother to illness, I saw how he shut down even more, as if confirming his theory." Duke rested his head on Benjamin's knee, his brown eyes fixed on him with unwavering attention. "I became exactly like him, you know. I built walls around myself, thinking I was protecting myself, until I met Jennifer." His voice broke. "She was the first person who managed to break through those barriers. And when you came along, our family was complete. Then the divorce happened, and I became my father's son again. Closed off, cold, obsessed with control." A solitary tear rolled down Benjamin Harrison's face. "Now I understand that. Michael saw that weakness in me. He knew exactly where to strike because I was predictable in my fragility, disguised as strength." Duke moved closer, as if wanting to absorb some of that pain. "But you never gave up on us, did you?" Benjamin smiled through his tears. "Even when I gave up on myself, you kept our family together in your own way. You're the best of us, you know." What Benjamin didn't notice was Jennifer, standing silently at the library door, listening to every word with a heavy heart. She had met Benjamin back in college, when he was still an ambitious young man but could still smile without reservation. She had watched his gradual transformation after his father-in-law's death, the hardening, the obsession with control. Now at last, she saw the man she had fallen in love with re-emerging, wiser and more complete. That night, lying side by side, Jennifer confessed her own fears from their years apart. "I was so afraid to reach out to you," she admitted. "When Michael told me you didn't want anything to do with me, that you were moving on, something inside me shattered. I thought I was just a temporary stop in your life, someone you needed to leave behind to continue your climb to the top." "There was never a top without you," Benjamin replied, holding her hand. "I just didn't realize it. When I found Duke in that park, it was like a piece of you had found me. Taking care of him kept me connected to you, even when I thought we'd never see each other again." Duke, who had been sleeping at the foot of the bed, lifted his head at the sound of his name as if understanding every word. When Emily was born on a sunny September morning, Duke immediately took on the role of guardian. The first time the baby was placed in her crib at home, the dog lay patiently beside her, a routine he would keep for years to come. Emily's first months brought sleepless nights and an exhaustion Benjamin had never experienced, not even during the most intense days at the company, but they also brought a joy so deep that sometimes he caught himself watching his daughter sleep, marveling at every tiny movement, every soft breath. One particularly difficult night, with Emily crying inconsolably for hours from colic, Benjamin paced the house with the baby in his arms, trying to soothe her, Jennifer had finally fallen asleep after 3 sleepless nights, and he was determined not to wake her. "What's wrong, Princess?" he murmured, gently rocking his daughter. "Daddy's here. It's going to be okay." Duke followed Benjamin's, every step, his watchful eyes fixed on little Emily. When Benjamin finally sank onto the couch, exhausted and out of ideas, the dog approached, gently nuzzling the baby's hand. To Benjamin's surprise, Emily stopped crying almost immediately, her wide little eyes locked on the dog. "So that's it? You just wanted Duke's attention?" Benjamin chuckled softly. In the months that followed, the bond between Duke and Emily only grew stronger. The dog seemed to know exactly when the baby needed company, lying beside her during naps, bringing his toys when she grew restless, or alerting Benjamin or Jennifer with a soft bark when she woke. When Emily began to crawl, Duke became her golden shadow, always alert, always close enough to step in if needed, yet giving space for the little one's natural curiosity. Emily's first word wasn't "Mama" or "Dada" as expected, but a determined "Duke" that filled the old golden retriever with pride. Jennifer captured these moments in photos and videos, creating an album that documented not just Emily's growth, but also Duke's unwavering devotion. Benjamin, who had rarely appeared in family photos before, was now in nearly everyone, his genuine smile reflecting the inner transformation he'd undergone. Life moved at a different pace now. Benjamin had learned to cherish every moment. Mornings began with walks alongside Duke and Emily's stroller. Sunday lunches brought together not just their immediate family, but also Mrs. Thompson, Ashley and her family, Mrs. Jenkins, and even Kevin, who had become a close friend. Duke, now with a few white hairs appearing on his golden muzzle, seemed more content each day, as if he knew his mission had been successfully accomplished. On a quiet holiday afternoon, while Emily, now nearly 3, played with Duke in the Highs yard under Jennifer's watchful eye, Benjamin received a call that left him thoughtful. "Something wrong?" Jennifer asked, noticing his expression. "It was Michael's lawyer," he replied slowly. "He wants to see me, to apologize in person before serving the rest of his sentence on parole." Jennifer took his hand. "What will you do?" Benjamin watched his daughter laughing as Duke gently let her place flowers on his ears. Emily had inherited her mother's expressive eyes and her father's determination, a combination that often left them speechless before. Her vibrant personality. "I'll see him. Not for him, but for me, for us, to close that chapter for good." Jennifer nodded in understanding. "Do you want me to come with you?" Benjamin considered the offer. Over the past few years, they'd faced everything together, the good and the bad surprises life had thrown their way. Still, this was a journey he needed to make alone. "I think I need to do this on my own," he finally answered, "but thank you for offering." That night, after Emily fell asleep, Benjamin sat on the porch with a glass of wine, contemplating his decision. Duke, always attuned to his moods, settled beside him. "What do you think, buddy?" he asked the dog. "Am I doing the right thing?" Duke tilted his head, his wise eyes fixed on Benjamin. "Yeah, I'm not sure either," he sighed. Jennifer joined them, bringing a blanket to shield against the evening breeze. "Are you worried about meeting Michael?" she asked, sitting close. "I'm nervous, to be honest," Benjamin admitted. "I don't know how I'll react when I see him. Part of me still feels so angry, for the years we lost, for everything he did." Jennifer stayed quiet for a moment, watching the stars beginning to dot the sky. "You know," she finally said, "I never told you this, but in the first few months after I found Duke, I used to take him near your office." "What?" Benjamin looked at her, surprised. "I'd park across the street waiting to see you come out for lunch or return from a meeting." She smiled wistfully. Duke would get so excited whenever he saw someone in a dark suit, as if he knew we were looking for you. "Why didn't you ever approach me?" "Fear, I guess. Fear that Michael was telling the truth, that you really didn't want anything to do with me anymore. And later, when I started suspecting him, I was afraid of what he might do if I tried to warn you." Benjamin held her hand. "And yet, you never completely gave up." "I think I learned from Duke. He always knew our family belonged together, even when the two of us had lost hope." The visit to the detention center was calmer than Benjamin had expected. Michael was visibly worn down, his arrogance replaced by a quiet pensiveness. The man who had entered prison wearing impeccable Italian suits and Swiss watches was now dressed in institutional garb, his face marked by deep bags under his eyes that spoke of sleepless nights. "Thank you for coming," he said simply. "I didn't come for you," Benjamin replied honestly. "I know." Michael hesitated before continuing. "How's Duke?" The question caught Benjamin off guard. "Why would you care?" "Because he was the only one who saw right through me from the start," Michael answered with a sad smile. "That dog. He knew who I really was long before anyone else suspected." Benjamin nodded slowly. A heavy silence settled between the two men who had once been like brothers, now separated by a metal table in a cold visitation room. "What happened to you, Michael?" Benjamin finally asked. "We were friends. I trusted you like no one else." Michael lowered his gaze, his hands fidgeting on the table. "Envy," he admitted after a long pause. "At first it was just envy. You had everything. Intelligence, charisma, the perfect girl, even the perfect dog." He let out a humorless laugh. "Meanwhile, I lived in your shadow, always second in command, always the guy no one noticed when you were around. I never treated you as lesser," Benjamin protested. "No, you didn't," Michael agreed. "And that made it even worse. Your generosity, your trust in me, it just made me feel even more inadequate. I started small, you know, a little here, a little there. The feeling of power was addictive. Then I realized that if you were more unstable, I'd have more control, and it worked." Benjamin looked at the man before him and saw not a calculating villain, but someone broken by his own insecurities. "He's fine, happy. We have a daughter now, Emily. He barely leaves her side." Something like genuine regret flickered in Michael's eyes. "I really am sorry, Benjamin. I don't expect your forgiveness, but I wanted you to know." "You know what's ironic?" Benjamin asked. "Everything you did to tear us apart ended up bringing us back together even stronger. If Duke hadn't disappeared, if you hadn't manipulated our lives, maybe we never would have realized what truly matters." Michael seemed to consider those words. "I always thought the happy ending would only be mine," he confessed. "I never imagined it would end up being yours too." When the guard announced the end of the visit, Benjamin stood, ready to leave that chapter behind. "Take care of them," Michael said as Benjamin walked away. "Your family, Duke. Don't make the same mistakes I did." "I won't," Benjamin replied, and for the first time in years he looked at Michael without anger or resentment, just with the quiet understanding that we all carry our own inner battles. As he stepped outside, Benjamin felt a weight lifting from his shoulders. He hadn't forgiven Michael, maybe he never fully could, but he had freed himself from the grip that betrayal once held over him. In the parking lot, he paused for a moment, letting the sun warm his face, breathing in the air of freedom, not just physical but emotional. The circle was complete. In the years that followed, Duke's story became almost legendary among friends and family. How a dog had vanished for 5 years and returned exactly when he was needed most, bringing with him truths that would change lives forever. Benjamin Harrison's company underwent as profound a transformation as its owner. What was once a corporation focused solely on financial results became a model of social responsibility and work-life balance. Benjamin implemented revolutionary policies for the American market, flexible schedules for parents, extended paternity leave, on-site daycare, and social projects in underprivileged communities. The press, which once portrayed him as the business shark, now called him the entrepreneur who humanized capitalism. When asked about the change, Benjamin would simply reply, "I learned from my dog that loyalty and compassion are more valuable than any bank account." Duke in turn became something of an unofficial mascot for the foundation created by Benjamin and Jennifer. During visits to schools and orphanages supported by the institution, the Golden Retriever was always the star, especially among the children. His story even inspired a children's book, written by Jennifer and illustrated by Ashley, which became a national success. As Emily grew older, her bond with Duke only strengthened. The bright and observant girl quickly understood the dog's importance in her family's story. "Without Duke, I wouldn't even exist, right, Daddy?" she once asked, surprising Benjamin with her insight. "Probably not, sweetheart," he answered honestly. "He kept our family together when everything seemed lost. So he's like a guardian. Angel with four paws?" she laughed, hugging the dog, who, despite being older with a nearly white muzzle, still had the same loving, protective gaze. "That's exactly right," Benjamin agreed, amazed by his daughter's simple yet profound wisdom. For Duke's 5th anniversary of returning home, Benjamin organized a special party at the farm they had bought on the outskirts of New York. Emily, now nearly 7, had helped plan every detail, including a special cake made of gourmet dog, food for the guest of honor. "Daddy, tell the story again about how Duke came back," she asked as everyone gathered for lunch. "He never really left, sweetheart," Benjamin replied, looking at Jennifer with love. "He was keeping part of our family safe until we were ready to be together again." Duke, lying comfortably between Benjamin and Jennifer with his head resting on Emily's small hand, seemed to smile as he listened to the tale of his own heroism. That night, after all the guests had left and Emily had finally fallen asleep, Benjamin and Jennifer sat on the porch, gazing at the stars. Duke rested at their feet, occasionally lifting his head to check that all was well. Time had left its mark on the couple, too. Small laugh lines framed Jennifer's eyes, silent witnesses to countless smiles. Benjamin's hair had begun to show, silver streaks at his temples, which Emily insisted made him look like a king. "I got a letter today," Jennifer mentioned after a comfortable silence. "From Michael." Benjamin turned to look at her, surprised. "What did it say?" "He's out now, doing community service at an animal shelter in rural Vermont," she said with a faint smile. "He said every dog he helps find a home makes him think of Duke, that he's trying to make up for some of the harm he caused." Benjamin fell silent, absorbing the news. There was a certain poetry to Michael working with abandoned animals that didn't escape him. "People really can change, can't they?" he finally reflected. "Some can," Jennifer replied. "Especially when they have good examples to follow." Duke raised his head upon hearing his name, his eyes shifting between the two humans with that attentive expression that seemed to understand every word exchanged. "Shall you know what I've learned most from this whole story?" asked Benjamin, holding Jennifer's hand. "What? That sometimes we need to lose something valuable to truly understand its worth. And if we're lucky, life gives us a second chance. To do better." Jennifer smiled, resting her head on his shoulder. "And we got that chance. Thanks to a stubborn golden retriever who refused to give up on us," Benjamin added, leaning down to pet Duke. "And it's not just that," Jennifer continued, her eyes shimmering with the reflection of the stars. "I think Duke taught us that family isn't just about sharing blood, but about sharing our hearts. Look at us now, Mrs. Thompson, Ashley, even Kevin. People who came into our lives in the most unexpected ways and became essential." Benjamin nodded thoughtfully. "I remember reading somewhere that dogs come into our lives by chance but stay on purpose. Duke proved that true in every possible way." The dog lifted his gaze to his owner, that wise, loving look only truly loyal dogs can express. In his brown eyes was an understanding beyond words, the certainty of a mission accomplished, a family restored, a love that survived every hardship. Months later, on a chilly winter morning, Emily came home from school with a special sparkle in her eyes. During dinner, she announced with the seriousness only a 7-year-old can muster, "I've decided what I want to be when I grow up." "And what's that, sweetheart?" Jennifer asked with a smile. "I want to help dogs like Duke find families, and help families stay together like ours." Benjamin felt his heart swell with pride. "That's a very important mission, Emily. How do you plan to do it?" The girl considered the question for a moment, stroking Duke, who, as always, lay near her chair. "I could be a vet to take care of the dogs, or a lawyer to help families with problems, or a writer to tell stories like Duke's and help people understand how important animals are." She furrowed her brow, deep in thought. "Can I be all three?" Jennifer and Benjamin exchanged amused glances. "If anyone can, it's you, Princess," Benjamin replied. The following fall, the family celebrated another special event, the opening of the Duke Adoption and Training Center, a project of the foundation Benjamin and Jennifer had created. The facility, built on a large wooded property, provided temporary shelter for abandoned animals and training programs to prepare dogs as therapy companions. At the grand opening, as Benjamin gave an emotional speech to the guests, Duke stood proudly by his side, despite his advanced age. Emily, wearing a white coat with the Foundation's logo, naturally took on the role of junior guide, explaining to visitors how the animals were cared for and prepared for their new families. "This place is Duke's legacy," she told an elderly woman who seemed especially charmed by her, "because he showed that one dog can change everything." Duke's story inspired not just the Harrison family, but an entire community. Other business leaders, following Benjamin's example, began implementing more humane policies in their companies. The book Jennifer wrote became required reading in several schools, teaching children values like loyalty, perseverance, and compassion. And in a cozy home surrounded by trees and flowers, a family that had nearly fallen apart found their way back, guided by 4 loyal paws and a heart that never gave up on them. As the night deepened and the family rested under the same roof, reunited against all odds, Duke kept his silent watch, the guardian of a home he had helped rebuild, piece by piece, with the persistence and unconditional love that only true heroes possess. Because sometimes angels don't have wings, sometimes they have 4 paws, a wet nose, and a tail that never stops wagging when they see the ones they love coming home. The end of the story. Dear listener, what did you think of this journey of redemption and reunion? Duke taught us that true loyalty is never lost. Leave your like, comment your favorite part, and subscribe for more heartwarming stories.